I will never forget that night spent in the woods. It was supposed to be an adventure, a simple camping trip with friends, a chance to escape the noise of the world and reconnect with nature. But it turned into something far different. 3 friends, Peter, and Jacob decided to escape the bustle of city life for a weekend camping trip deep in the woods. We had heard rumors about the forest being haunted, but we shrug it off as local legend, something to add a bit of excitement to our adventure. We arrived at the campsite just as the sun began to set, casting an orange glow through the trees. The smell of pine filled the air, and the sounds of rustling leaves and chirping crickets made it feel like we had stepped into a world far removed from the busy lives we left behind. We set up our tents, built a campfire, and settled in for what we thought would be a peaceful evening under the stars. But as the darkness crept in, something shifted. The usual sounds of the forest seemed to grow quieter, and an unsettling silence began to settle over us. It was as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. We sat around the fire, laughing and telling stories, but even the warmth of the flames couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Every now and then a twig would snap in the distance, or the wind would howl just a little too loudly. At first, we brushed it off, just the forest settling in for the night. But then the noises grew more distinct, footsteps slow and deliberate, moving through the underbrush. Not the random scurry of small animals, but something larger, something that was following us. I tried to convince myself it was just an animal, a deer or maybe a bear, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I wasn't the only one who felt it. My friends had stopped talking, their eyes darting toward the darkness beyond the firelight. One of them, Jake, stood up abruptly. "I'm going to check it out," he said, as if trying to assert control over the creeping unease. The rest of us hesitated but didn't stop him. We watched as he disappeared into the trees, his figure swallowed up by the night. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. No sound, no movement. We tried calling for him, but our voices seemed to vanish into the thick, oppressive air of the woods. Panic started to set in. Where was he? We grabbed our flashlights, and the 3 of us set out in search of Jake, our hearts pounding with every step. The forest seemed alive with shadows, with eyes watching from the blackness. We called his name, but there was no answer. Then, as we pushed deeper into the woods, we found something. Jake's backpack, lying on the ground near an old, twisted tree. The straps were torn, the contents scattered, but Jake was nowhere to be found. A chill ran down my spine as I bent to inspect the ground around the tree. There, half hidden in the dirt, were strange marks, long, claw-like scratches etched into the bark. They weren't animal tracks. They were dot, 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 something else. Suddenly, the growl came again, closer this time. And then a shadow moved, huge and unnatural, just beyond the beam of our flashlights. We froze. Without a word, we turned and ran, desperate to make it back to camp. The sound of something following us grew louder, closer. I could feel the heat of its breath on my neck, but when I dared to glance back, there was nothing there, just the forest, dark and silent again. We didn't stop running until we reached the safety of our tents, hearts racing and breath coming in ragged gasps. The fire was still burning, but the air felt cold, heavier than before. By morning, we packed up and left without a word, not daring to look back. Jake never returned. We never spoke of that night again, and we never went back to that woods. The memory of that growl, of the feeling that something was watching us, would stay with me forever. I will never forget that night spent in the woods, not because of the beauty of the trees or the serenity of nature, but because of the dark, haunting thing that lurked just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike.